Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. Larry and Kevin are here, and the president, 7 o'clock this morning, ripped up the program and ripped up the news cycle, ripped up everything. But a lot of questions remain. So we'll talk about the impact of the president's Truth Social post declaring the ultimatum he gave to be null and void. And markets have reacted. Iran has reacted. The world has reacted. And it doesn't solve every problem, but it means that we'll not all be waiting around all day to see what happened at 7:40 tonight Eastern. Larry, Kevin, welcome in. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no surprise and 10 being shocked, Larry, how surprised are you that the president found an off-ramp for this portion of the narrative?
About a 6 or 7. He likes to shake up the Etch-a-Sketch now and again.
6 or 7. Kevin, 0 meaning no surprise, 10 meaning shock.
Three. This is
3.
like, it's all messaging in the market as we're seeing.
Wait, did I go in the wrong direction?
Okay, yeah, you meant 3 also. So. You meant 3. You meant 3 also.
You meant 3 also.
I meant 3.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm surprised he did it as quickly as he did. But of course, if you saw what markets were doing pre-open, you would know that, of course, it made sense for him to do it. So we'll talk about the president's post, again, declaring his ultimatum null and void and saying he and the Iranians, the United States have been talking. We'll give you our latest reporting on that and everything about the war and a few more topics. And then, of course, your questions, comments, suggestions, critiques, concern about my background, whatever you want. Please raise your hand if you'd like to get in on the conversation. If you're here on the two-way platform, just raise it high. And if you're watching on X or on YouTube, no second in the chat. We had some great first-time participants from the community last week. And again, we'd urge you, the water's safe here. Kevin and Larry are extremely kind, generous, almost nurturing, really just highly paternal in their sensibilities. So please don't be afraid.
I've always said that.
Always said that. Please raise your hand. Quick sponsor word, and then to the daybook, and then to your questions, comments, concerns after we kick things around.
Mark, all the questions are going to be about the horse. Are you going to do a scene from Equus later?
I know. Really, more like
it's still a family show, Larry. It's still a family show.
All right. Not
more
that
like
scene from Equus.
More like Godfather. All right. CozyEarth.com, 20% off. The massive sale continues into the week. Ask yourself, what does comfort that carries you from morning to night feel like? It feels like Cozy Earth. If you're traveling and you don't have your bubble cuddle blanket, you're feeling a little bereft, you can always buy the small size, easier to carry with you. Certainly you can take the socks anywhere you go, the shirts, the pants. I don't recommend traveling with the towels, but if you come attached to them, as many have, perhaps you will. Everything on the site is 20% off. Go to CozyEarth.com and use our promo code promo code morning for 20% off everything on the site. Cozy Earth makes stuff like nobody else, and mention us in the post-purchase survey. Experience the craft behind the comfort and make every day feel intentional. Cozy Earth. The president today, having shaken up the world with his 7 a.m. Eastern time post on Truth Social, heads to Memphis, where he's doing a law enforcement event. As you know, Memphis is one of the cities that the immigration folks have gone into. So he travels to Memphis, does an open press event, and then from Florida, where he stayed this weekend, and then to Washington, D.C. No events for the vice president at this point. Pete Hegseth is with the president for the 1 p.m. Eastern Time Memphis Safe Task Force Roundtable. Energy Secretary Wright is participating in Sarah Week in Houston, a big energy conference. House is out. Senate is going to debate Mark Wayne Mullins' nomination for DHS Secretary. Confirmation note could come this evening. And a bipartisan group of senators continues to work on a solution on the border issue and the DHS funding issue with more optimism on both sides today than there has been in quite some time. Republicans are giving a little bit of ground there. And Rahm Emanuel is in Wisconsin, La Crosse, Wisconsin, for a town hall. Homeland Security Committee is going to have a hearing on the effects of DHS shutdown with officials from the Coast Guard and other agencies on Wednesday, unless they get a solution by then. Senate Foreign Relations on Wednesday, this is our week ahead, but briefing on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Armed Services is getting a briefing on this conflict in Iran on Wednesday also. So those are two big briefings. Mike Johnson is expected to try again on DHS funding on Thursday again, unless there's a negotiated solution by then. Amongst Jimmy Kimmel's guests this week's the great Elizabeth Banks. Elizabeth Banks. Kevin, what's her finest role in your view?
I mean, she was great in Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect. That, Larry, that's the correct answer, unless you want to spoil the consensus.
Yeah.
God forbid, no.
Okay.
In fact, I couldn't name another movie. Oh no, wait, wasn't she in 40-Year-Old Virgin as well?
I think she is. And is she also not in Best in Show? I think she's in Best in Show too. Anyway, it's the
She in
correct
Best in
answer is
Show?
Pitch
Yeah.
Perfect. Somebody,
I just
somebody look that
remember
up.
her in that great music video that all the Hollywood celebrities did for Hillary Clinton at the DNC in 2016.
Forgot all about
This
that.
is my fight song. Oh, the
It's,
fight
it's
song
called.
montage.
It was called the Macarena, and it was in 1996, Larry.
Stop-
when they were
stop
all
it.
doing it from
That
the
was
stage.
Amongst the Tonight Show guests this week, Cardi B and BTS. All right, here's the news of the day, folks. 7 o'clock this morning, the president went on Truth Social and posted this. Number 103, please. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I've instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Here's how the Iranians responded to the announcement. They denied talks have taken place, 119. Statement says Iran agency denies report of talks to end war. That's the Reuters account. Here's Barak Ravid of Axios. His reporting's correct here, matches my own. There are talks in this sense. He says 3 countries, and I believe there's a 4th and maybe a 5th country who've been involved as well. He says Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan have been passing messages between the U.S. and Iran over the past 2 days in an effort to de-escalate, U.S. sources say. 3 senior officials from 3 countries held separate talks with Steve Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister. Here's the thing about it, ladies and gentlemen. When we say the expression, the bazaar is always open, here's how the bazaar is always open. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner both have cell phones. Okay, and so anybody can call them and say, hey, I'm from Turkey or I'm from Pakistan, and the Iranians are saying this. So I think the Iranians are pretending that there aren't conversations. There definitely are. It does raise the question, who in Iran is talking for on behalf of the Iranian government, since we don't really know who's in charge. So, Larry, a lot of people will spend the day speculating about why the president did what he did, but we're always trying to be forward-looking here. The president didn't say the Israelis and the U.S. would stop hitting Iranian targets. He just said they wouldn't hit the energy target. So what happens next, Larry? What happens next now that the president's put this on Truth Social?
I think what happens next is we wait until the president makes his next post on Truth Social. I mean, honestly, Mark, I listen, I think you're right. I don't like using the term off-ramp, but I think he was looking for some positive excuse or reason or hook to be able to come down a notch. We have seen this. This is how the president has engaged in these things. You amp it up, you bring it down a notch. And if you don't get the results you want, you amp it up again and amp it up, bring it down a notch, and then it reaches a point where you amp it up so high that there ends up being a strike. I think that if past is prologue, you look for a resolution here to the president's liking in the next week or so, or else you're going to have a strike. Another escalation, I should say, militarily.
Well, but in the next week, will the Israelis continue to hit Tehran? They hit Tehran pretty hard overnight. Is that going to continue? Yeah. Okay. Here's the president. Here's Maria Bartiromo moments ago. The president talked to both CNBC and Fox Business in the aftermath of his post. Here is Maria Bartiromo.
Said the talks, I said 5 days to halt or postpone strikes on the electrical infrastructure. It could happen sooner, he said, but I have put down 5 days. I asked him what his reaction is to Iranian state television saying that there are no talks, and he said he's not sure what they are referring to because the most recent talks happened, in fact, last night. with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and their counterparts. When I asked about the Iranian TV saying that no talks have happened, he said it's hard to get any information there because of the U.S. is blowing up so much of their infrastructure. So again, he wasn't sure what Iran state TV was talking about, because the most recent talks, he said, happened last night with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Again, the president just told me moments ago that the Iranians want to do a deal badly. The market, of course, has reversed course this morning after the president posted this morning in the middle of a big decline in markets. He said that he has directed the military to postpone strikes on the electrical infrastructure and the power plants for 5 days as these talks continue. The Dow Industrials immediately reversed course when the president came out with that post and remained higher. The Dow right now up 750, the S&P up 100, and the Nasdaq up 380. The president this morning, a moment ago, confirmed with me on the phone that, in fact, Iran wants to do a deal, quote, badly. Let's take a look at the reversal in oil, where we see Brent trading down 7.5% at 103.73, and crude oil down 7% at 91.41.
So again, the markets were deep in the red in the futures before the open, and we'll see what happens at the open in 20 minutes. But Kevin, I see in the chat, I don't read it, but I do glance at it, that people are saying, well, he can only cry wolf so often. He can cry wolf as many times as he wants, I think. But what do you think happens now? For instance, what about all those Marines headed to the region? What about the notion that we were about to invade and take Karg? Does everything get suspended now, at least until the president changes course? Are we in a holding pattern? Will the Israelis be in a holding pattern?
Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily in a holding pattern. I think he's also playing for time, and we've seen this before with Maduro in terms of telegraphing one thing and doing another thing. So I think those Marines, those over 2,000 Marines, are still there. It's going to take a few days for them in terms of reinforcements to reach the area. Again, your question, Mark, is so important in terms of what Israel is also doing. I think, you're seeing, a different definition of talks, right? So obviously it's the case that we are telegraphing things for those three countries that you just mentioned. It's not a summit. We're not, Witkoff and Jared Kushner aren't sitting down with the Iranians now, but it seems like there are messages going back and forth, and we're quabbling over the definition of what talking means. I think at this point, based on the reporting.
Up until now, go ahead, Larry.
I was going to say, isn't this what Trump does all the time, whether it's negotiating with Democrats in Congress or it's negotiating with foreign countries over tariffs, or it's this kind of thing? I mean, this is
great example with the tariffs, right? He announces it, and then the markets go crazy, like we saw back and forth with China a number of times.
He resets the table, and I have no doubt. And by the way, it was very specific what he said. We're going to suspend the strikes on these things, which, by the way, we haven't really been striking much anyway. He threatened to strike as of 7 p.m. tonight, I think was the deadline. So he's basically suspended what he threatened to do that we haven't done yet. So other than that, everything goes according to the way it's been.
Well, the key thing is what the Israelis do too, because I do think there is, reporting that they have been targeting some of the energy infrastructure there.
Yeah, overnight they hit a lot of stuff. So the Iranians up until now have said any deal that they'd consider would involve reparations and no American military bases in the region, and a promise not to be hit again. Those are non-starters. I could use a stronger word than
non-starters.
But those aren't going to happen. So, Kevin, what is a deal? Let's say they're negotiations. Whoever's involved, direct, indirect. What could a deal look like that would end the war without American boots on the ground, without significant destruction of more targets in any country? What would a deal look like?
Well, the Iranians need money, and they need it now. And you saw some aspects of that play out with the oil question in Iranian tankers in the administration, allowing for some of that shipping to go forward. Because again, the legitimacy of the regime is so focused on the state of the economy, and it's been devastated. It was devastated before these attacks started. That's what prompted a lot of those demonstrations that we saw break out in late December. So it's money on the Iranian front, and I think for us, it's the nuclear program and the missile program. I think those are the two key factors. That way, the president can say, declare victory. We've decimated them. The American people overwhelmingly support taking out their nuclear capacity and setting that back. So I think those are the two factors: money for the Iranian regime to prop it up more, unfortunately, and our commitments when it comes to missile and nuclear technology.
Larry, given how critical the president's been of the Obama administration giving Iran money, some in his party might object, but is that a deal that the president could make?
No, I agree with Kevin on the especially after the use of an intermediate range ballistic missile that is within the range of our Western European allies over the weekend, that the missile program and the nuclear program have to be obliterated and ended. And I think the only way money flows to the Iranian government is not in pallets of cash. It's by striking some sort of business arrangement. Trump has been talking about wanting to get Iran back into the world community and actually ending its hostility in the region. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but if they're going to have any money to help, refund their government and their operations, it's going to be through business dealings, not through cash payouts. There's no
and that's what I mean. I mean, it's their ability to sell their own oil, right? Which is what the Obama deal was a part of too, is their own cash.
And more though. And more. I mean, I think that's why Kushner is involved. This is what Kushner does, right? He gets all these parties in the room, and somehow everybody ends up making money in a business deal.
And Witkoff too. I mean, that's a driving factor with them.
But could that be done with whatever the current regime is, or does that require some sort of?
So.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so.
I don't really understand what a deal would be.
It's their way of doing regime change through a boardroom instead of with boots on the ground.
So just as a binary yes, no, are the current quote unquote talks going to lead to a settlement and an end of hostilities, or is this just an interlude? Yes or no? Will the settlement talks likely to lead to will the current talks negotiations lead to an end of the war? Yes, no, Larry.
If no means interlude, no.
Kevin, is this going to end?
I think it means an interlude, and I think it's a play for time, as I said, as the Marines get there and more resources get to the area.
Right. So before the president posted, there were a number of topics that we were going to talk about. Again, always being forward-looking. Let me just run through some of them and hear what you guys think. Israel's missile defense let through some attacks this weekend. And of course, the Saudis have missile defense too. The Gulf states do, and these are not perfect. We've always known that, but Israel's yet to explain how those missiles got through. Here's a Times of Israel headline: Iranian cluster missile impacts caused damage but no injuries in central Israel. They're lucky, fortunate that there were no injuries or fatalities, but they did get through. And again, last I saw, the Israelis hadn't explained it. Kevin, is this a strand we need to keep watching? If Israel is, and because clearly Iran can still fire missiles despite President Trump's claim that we've destroyed their capacity. So how serious should we be looking at that going forward?
I think very serious. And Larry made the excellent point in terms of the range of the missiles that we are now finding out in terms of the regime's capabilities, especially targeting Diego Garcia, which is our joint base with the Brits. But the missile technology and the capacities there are the key focus. I think one other illustration of just how desperate and dangerous and despicable the Iranian regime is, now they're using cluster munitions in terms of these missiles. So cluster bombs are far dangerous. We had this debate a few years ago with Ukraine, Russia, and the use of cluster munitions, just because of the deadliness of it. And the fact that they're using those cluster munitions on innocent Israelis it speaks volumes again about this regime.
Larry,
my understanding is the nature. They should be concerned because the nature of those clusters that's what makes it easier for these projectiles to make it past the Iron Dome or the David Sling and Rock or the various names that they have for their missile defense. Those are the ones that can get through. And my understanding is, I don't know if the Israeli government has made an official announcement, but my understanding of it is that that's why they were able to seep through because of the cluster munitions. It should be a concern, and it should also be a concern that they've depleted a lot of their arsenal with regard to the missile defense, and that's going to reach a breaking point too.
Is that cluster bomb thing you're reporting, or have you seen other people report that?
Other people
It's not-
reported
I-
it. It is the cluster
yeah, it's-
munitions that they're
it's-
using.
Huh?
My
no,
only
but
original
that's-
reporting has to
but
do
that's-
with
To Larry's point, that's
that's-
why so many targets have been hit, because it's so obviously it
Right.
breaks apart.
All right.
And it's deadly.
So the president's history when he moves assets, human or hardware, he uses them. He doesn't move stuff and then doesn't use it. And we've seen a bunch of stuff move to the region since hostilities started, including more Marines. And I don't know what the latest development does for the prospect of putting Marines on the coast to help clear the prospect of traffic going through the strait or taking Karg. Larry, where are you on the introduction of ground troops, ground forces as an option at this point?
I think the president doesn't want to because he keeps saying he doesn't want to, but the threat and the increased threat with the new troops, the new Marine units that are coming in, are meant to back up exactly what you just said, Mark, which is this is what he will do. And if Iran doesn't reach some sort of settlement, they will be utilized, probably at Karg Island. So I hope that's a good answer for you. But I'm torn between what I think is going to happen and what I don't want to happen. But I think if Iran hunkers down and they don't move on this, then yes, we're going to be utilizing our Marines for certain actions.
Kevin, what you think Marines are headed to be on the ground unless there's a massive breakthrough in whatever talks there are?
Yeah, certain targeted actions to Larry's point and to your point, Mark. The president really, as we've seen, doesn't bluff with this stuff. And again, I think this also, as I said earlier, it could be a play for cover for some time to move more of those resources into the area.
But the key distinction is that they will be used for operations and for not for an invasion and not for a occupation, but they'll be utilized for specific operations and then they will be withdrawn.
Right. Okay. And then lastly, the Iranian regime, like, we have no idea what's going on. We know they're not so decimated that they can't put out statements of propaganda and statements that are threatening to the United States. We know that they can fire missiles with capability to get through the Israeli defense, to send intermediate or long-range missiles beyond what the West knew that they had. And we know that they can keep tight control over their domestic dissent because there still seems to be very little. And we know that they can keep them from being mass defections from within the government. So, Kevin, how would you appraise what our current sense of how formidable, not just as an asymmetrical force, but as a functioning government that is a formidable foe for the United States, Iran currently is?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're seeing. Just the strength of this regime, despite 40 plus years of total domination of the people, and we're seeing how that plays out. Again, the difference is, we have in our minds the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we have to remember this is a country of 92 million people, twice the size of Texas. This is a massive country, and this chokehold that the regime still has, despite us not even knowing necessarily who's in charge. We've seen a few statements from the Ayatollah, the new Ayatollah, the son, who's taken over. We've never seen him yet in public. Obviously, Pete Hegseth last week said that he was disfigured and wounded in that first attack that took out his father. But the fact that you're still seeing this regime necessarily in place, I think speaks volumes to just the totality of its control over its own people.
Larry, he's probably go ahead.
Well, do you know, is it Aragchi and Larijani that they're actually engaged? I mean, we know on our side who's doing the talking, but who's doing the listening on their side?
I mean, I assume the foreign minister, but who knows who he's talking to?
Aragchi, yeah.
And the president, the Iranian president is still kicking, supposedly, as of this morning.
Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about domestic. The president's doing this event in Memphis today. And every Republican strategist I talk to still says House is lost and maybe north of 25 seats. And maybe. And the Senate's still okay because of you go race by race. They can still hold the Senate. In fact, I actually think if you go race by race, you can't reach any conclusion, but they're still the favorite to hold the Senate. But the president's numbers remain bad. Here's Harry Enton on CNN talking about the president standing with independents on the economy. 110, please.
To be. He's the leader of the pack, or last in the pack, when it comes to 21st century presidents and how Americans are viewing him on the economy, at least among independents. Look at this. 21st century presidents, economic net approval ratings at this point in term 2 among independents. Trump is 48 points underwater. Just 1 in 4 independents say that they approve of the job that he is doing when it comes to the economy. His net approval rating on the economy among independents, twice as bad as Barack Obama's was at this point, who was 25 points underwater, and double digits worse than George W. Bush was among independents, according to CBS News at this point when it comes to the economy. Look, these are numbers that if I were a Republican running for Congress, I would be shaking in place, because there's really nowhere to hide if you're a Republican running for Congress and President Trump is in this bad a shape among independents and Americans overall when it comes to the economy. Jessica?
Okay. Now, the election's not tomorrow, but Republicans who think they're going to get $200 billion emergency defense bill are wrong. They're not going to get it through reconciliation. They're not going to get it through 60 votes in the Senate. So I don't know where that stands, but this war is still not very popular. It's not as unpopular as it was based on the latest polling.
But Mark, just a point on that. You don't think it's going to, again, I think that's the only hope, is that it comes through reconciliation. You don't think that happens?
Here's why I don't think it happens. Number one, it would take a long time, and by then the war will be over. The reconciliation, almost under any circumstances, the war will be over before reconciliation.
It's a lengthy process in terms of the structure of it.
And reconciliation has 2 additional problems. Number one, it needs offsets. You're not going to get $200 billion in offsets. I saw some Republican senator talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. No. Or entitlement reform. You're not going to do that in an election year in a Republican-only bill. You're not reforming entitlements in a reconciliation bill. And once you open the bazaar in reconciliation, what else is going in it?
And everybody, yeah.
So I think it's ludicrous.
I don't know. Just put a clause in that says Minnesota and California don't get any more Medicare funding because of the fraud that's been uncovered there. Medicaid funding that might bring it up to $200 billion.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
I'm being snarky.
I know.
No, but you're right.
Did you guys?
Yeah.
It's not going to be reconciliation.
Did you guys watch Scott Bessent on Meet the Press?
Yes, he was great.
I did. Yeah.
All right, Larry, you said he was great?
I thought he was great.
Okay, many people in my life thought he was great. They thought it was typical, like, masterclass, blah, blah, blah. I want you to watch this moment and tell me what you think. Kevin first. This is Scott Bessent being asked, will you consider raising taxes to pay for this war? Something that's been done in American history. This is a non-anti-tax party. But there's also a big deficit and debt, by the way, which Scott Bessent says he's determined to help deal with. Here's Scott Bessent asked by Kristen Welker, no new taxes, 109, please.
Would the administration ever raise taxes in order to fund this war?
Again, Kristen, the terrible framing. I think that
well, it's just it's a simple question that I think a lot of people have.
It's a ridiculous question.
But what can you answer it?
Why would we do that? That we have plenty. We have $1 trillion in this year's budget for the military, and President Trump, even before the conflict started, had said that he would like to further build out the military.
So just is raising taxes under consideration at all? If you're saying you have plenty of money.
Not at all.
Okay.
Kevin, what do you think of that answer at a time of debt and deficit?
Well, he certainly doesn't want to replay the George H.W. Bush moment in terms of read my lips. And again, I think Bessent is very effective in the soundbite space in terms of not being able to be clipped, saying something like that, like the Trump administration is considering raising taxes. Okay, that's an attack ad right there. So he does his verbal jujitsu messaging, especially to the markets, and I think that's why he's effective about that. Even with Welker pushing, you saw that, her pushing him on Bob Mueller too, and what the president said in that Truth Social post, in terms of asking him, is this okay, or to condemn this, and four times he played that off. So you're not going to get him to admit to anything that's going to hurt the administration. None of the cabinet secretaries really are.
Yeah. Larry, was that moment we just watched amongst the moments you thought were good, or that's an exception to your rave review of his performance?
Well, I think in terms of the content, I thought it was good. It was one of the few moments where he was caught a little bit. It sounded like he was stammering a bit and trying to search for the words, which is not normal for him. But I thought that substance-wise, it was the appropriate way to answer it. Because I think that he was caught off guard, because who on earth has been floating the idea that Trump's going to raise taxes for anything, let alone for this military strike?
I agree, and I'm not here to be accused of being someone who just wants to raise taxes. That's not my position. But we do usually like to not charge our children for things that we choose to do, or our grandchildren.
I think that's gone by the wayside.
It has, but
why start now?
Well, because typically you ask people to sacrifice in time of war. Again, I'm not advocating a tax increase, but all I'm saying is it's not a ludicrous question to say this is not part of whatever the president wanted $1 trillion more for defense spending. It didn't include this war, and so I don't think it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Well, Larry,
I really do.
Who's going to pay for? Larry, who's going to pay for our war? We do have taxes already. It's not like we don't have taxes. So the question is, what level should they be at? And I'm just saying, it seems like not a ludicrous question to say, if your policy is you want to spend $200 billion more of my grandchildren's money, then explain how you're going to pay for it. If the answer is we're not going to raise taxes, we're just going to charge Mark Halperin's great-grandchildren, say so.
Well, I don't think that's the answer either. But, Mark, the reason why I think it's ridiculous is that, first of all, they tried to get George W. Bush on this during the war on terror. And George W. Bush's answer was, go out and spend money and go to the mall. That will help things out, build the economy up, number one. But they tried to do the same thing. It's a time of war. We should all be asked to sacrifice. Why aren't you asking us to sacrifice? Because, that's what a president wants to do. Everybody make a sacrifice. Number two, I don't remember Kristen Welker or whoever was sitting in that chair pressing Barack Obama about how he was going to pay for all of the things that he paid for, including the Affordable Care Act, which is why we're in the position we're in right now. Because when Barack Obama is the president, he gets away with saying, oh, it's not going to cost us any penny. This is budget neutral. Look where we are right now. How budget neutral does Obamacare feel? So that's why it's frustrating from my perspective, because it's a double standard that Republicans are always asked to meet and Democrats never are.
It's never a winning strategy, to Larry's point, for any president. Going back to the Malaise speech, sacrifice a little, turn up that thermostat, what have you. We are a consumer mentality where even the rise in gas prices is what's going to drive the end of this war, because Americans, going back to the victory gardens in World War II, are not used to sacrifice anymore during times of crisis.
All I'll say is I thought Scott Bessent seemed not just taken aback by the framing that he didn't agree with. I don't think it's a substantively answerable question without telling the truth, and think he didn't want to tell the truth in that case. 2 pilots died at LaGuardia today when a Air Canada plane hit a fire truck. Not clear that this has anything to do, there's no reason to think it does, with the ongoing airport security lines because of TSA. There might be some reason they're connected, but not that we know of. Horrible accident, and the video is just chilling. Today, in theory, the president and having the Homeland Security send ICE agents to the airports to try to help TSA deal with the shortfalls. The lines continue to get longer. We've all, I'm sure, heard horror stories. Here's the headline from CBS News. Officials at Immigration and Customs Enforcement have been scrambling to carry out a weekend directive from President Trump to have immigration agents provide security at airports amid the partial government shutdown. It's obviously going to be a scramble, although they have the right, some of the right skills to assist. Obviously, integrating a whole different group of people into TSA is going to be complicated. And, there's now stories of 5 and 6 hour long waits to get through at Hartsfield and other airports. The Punchbowl reports that John Thune asked the president if they could accept a deal where all of DHS would be funded except ICE, and that the president said, no, you've got to pass the Save America Act first. Larry, Tom Homan seems determined to find a negotiated settlement. I think we're closer than we've been to a settlement. Does it end this week or not?
Yes. I think by Friday you'll have DHS refunded and this will be resolved. I don't quite understand that Punchbowl story, by the way, in terms of fund everything except ICE, because isn't ICE funded through 27 right now? What are they going to?
Well,
they've
it
got a
is.
ton of money.
It just means not vote for them any new money, I think is what it means.
Yeah,
Kevin,
I think they're going to reach a resolution by the
Do you
end of the
agree it ends this week, Kevin?
Yeah, Senate and House are in. Obviously, there's a recess that they're looking down next week. So I think they move on this. Markey reported home and on the Hill last week, meeting with Democrats and Republicans. And it is interesting to see Thune and the team Thune release that information that Senate Republicans are on board with this Democratic proposal to fund everything except this, and Trump is the stumbling block. That's the interesting. I don't know if he's giving cover to his members because of the frustrations at the airport, saying we're willing to do this. The president is still pushing on the SAVE Act. I thought that was an interesting tidbit that it's almost throwing the president under the bus, that he's the stumbling block now with Senate Democrats and Republicans in agreement.
The Republicans are giving a fair amount of ground to get where they are in the talks, and Democrats, of course, much to nobody's surprise, they're emboldened by this. Now that Republicans are giving some ground, they're going to wait and see if they can get more. But I think this is going to be settled this week, and I think you're going to see a lot of capitulation on the part of Republicans and the White House to get it done.
Right.
All right.
And you saw Mark Mullen being fairly conciliatory on some things, disagreeing, calling out problems with Kristi Noem's leadership as he takes the helm tonight, potentially.
Do you think it was Thune throwing Trump under the bus, or do you think Trump said, I'll take the shot on this one if you need to throw someone under the? I mean, I wonder if they willingly said, I'll take the heat. I'm fine standing my ground on this issue.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know who's telegraphing, whether it's in the president's interest to say that he's still looking tough on SAVE Act. Nothing's going to get passed. Because again, what they said, the administration said 2 weeks ago is, SAVE Act is everything. Nothing passes except reopening DHS. It seems like that's a change this morning in terms of the reporting, saying, oh no, that's included into it too. We're not reopening, DHS before the SAVE Act.
Right.
The elegance of having ICE come to the rescue and be the good guys, though, to alleviate the pressure on the American citizens, I think is just it's beautiful, and the harmony involved there.
Do they really know how to do it though, Larry?
Do what? I mean, what they're going to do is basic crowd control, watching doors, checking IDs, which TSA agents have to do as well. So the TSA agents can do the actual day-to-day X-ray machine and things like that they do. Of course, they're fine. They're professional law enforcement. They'll be great. All
right. I wish I were flying today so I could thank them. Last topic for us.
I'm flying tomorrow, so I will.
Okay. I'm flying tomorrow too. So
last topic.
Bring your gift cards,
and then your questions and comments. Please raise your hand if you're here on the platform. If you've never raised your hand, today's the day. Was it one of you who told me to listen to Governor Pritzker on that New York Times podcast? Was that one of you guys? No,
it wasn't me.
No,
somebody
I only saw the one clip that was going around on Project 2029.
But he killed at the gridiron. He killed at the gridiron.
He did kill it. He did kill at the gridiron, as did Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But somebody told me, Mark, if you don't understand why people are so high on Governor Pritzker as a potential nominee, go listen to that thing. And whoever told me that, I'm asking you now to give me my hour back. It was the same as always. I have nothing against the guy. I do not. But nothing in that podcast suggests to me that he should or could be the Democratic nominee. And the woman who does those New York Times podcasts, she should just be a DNC member ex officio. I mean,
is he number three? Is he number 3 right now on your 8 for 28? Mark?
He was number 3 on the March rankings. There's no way he will be number 3. None. After listening to that podcast, 0.
To the podcast host's benefit, she did rock the Annie Hall look, though. She's bringing back that Diane Keaton thing, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I know what you mean because I saw the still, but I listened to it. I didn't watch it, but I just.
Oh, okay. You guys.
But I did see a still. I know what you're talking about. I don't understand it. Anyway, here's my question: if you take the war and you take the DHS funding fight, has any Democrat who might run for president advanced themselves? What's the word I'm looking for?
Help themselves,
elevated, whatever. Has anybody over the course of the last couple weeks on those two stories elevated themselves above the field on those issues that come to either of your minds?
Yeah. Not particularly. In terms of again, the real leaders
not on your list.
Yeah. Who?
I'd say Chris Murphy for the base.
Yeah.
Chris Murphy has gained himself some fans in the base, although he's not on your list yet.
Okay. Anybody think Josh Shapiro has helped himself?
Well, again, I mean, this is mostly negotiations in the Senate and stuff like that. I think the governors actually have some, it actually helps the governors that they're not involved necessarily in this. And again, they're not involved in the long lines right now too, right? So they can say, I'm trying, that's the Senate and the House right now. That's not the governors.
And Mark Kelly, who drew enthusiastic but tiny crowds in New Hampshire, do either of you think he's helped himself in the last couple of weeks?
Well, if you can tell me what he said.
Okay, that answers the question.
I mean,
all right.
What Mark Kelly's been doing in the last couple of weeks is going to all these donor events and obviously building those relationships. And all accounts are that he's really effective in those small rooms with Democratic major donors, whether it be in Utah or what have you.
I think he might have helped himself based on what I've heard, but we'll see. All right, quick word from a sponsor, then to your questions. Please raise your hand. Right now, you want some free money. You can get it from the free Upside app. Download the app, and it will help you just make some purchases as you would normally do for gasoline, restaurants, and supermarkets, and you get cash back. There's no trick here. There's no catch. It's just a way to save some money with the free Upside app. Cash back. You still get all the points and everything else you get with your credit card as you normally would. 100,000 stores, locations around the country participate. You go in the app, and it tells you where they are. No cash, no points, no credits, just cash back. You open the app, claim an offer, and pay with your card like normal. That's it. You can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside than with loyalty programs or credit card or rewards alone. They give away $1 million a week to its users, and they've given up over $1 billion in the course of the app. So go to your phone right now and download the Upside app, and you can save an extra 25 cents on your first gallon of gas if you use the promo code MARK. So try it. If you got to get gas this week, just download the Upside app, put in the promo code MARK, and save 25 cents more than the normal savings on every gallon of gas you purchase on your first tank.
Cha-ching.
I've been trying to use that promo code MARK across other websites too.
Yeah, it works. It works almost everywhere. Tom, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two-Way Unmute. Tell folks it's President talking. Let's listen.
He's talking. President's talking.
Major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. Perhaps that hasn't been conveyed. The communication, as you know, has been blown to pieces. They're unable to talk to each other. But we've had very strong talks. Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner had them. They went, I would say, perfectly. I would say that if they carry through with that, it'll end that problem, that conflict. And I think it'll end it very, very substantially. We have very much in mind our partners in the Middle East. We've had great relationships with a lot of them, as you know. A lot of them were surprisingly hit. And I was surprised to see it, and so was everyone else. But we have, they're very much in mind in the discussions. So the discussions took place yesterday. They went into yesterday evening. They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal, too. We're going to get together today by probably phone, because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out, I guess. But we'll at some point very, very soon meet. We're doing a 5-day period.
With the media
we'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
Who is Steve Witkoff speaking with, Mr. President?
A top person. Don't forget, we've wiped out the leadership phase 1, phase 2, and largely phase 3.
Yep.
But we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader. It's a little tough. We've wiped out everybody.
Is that the Supreme Leader?
No, not the Supreme Leader. We don't. Well, nobody heard of the second Supreme Leader, the son.
Are these direct?
Nobody. We have not heard from the son. Every once in a while, you'll see a statement made, but we haven't. We don't know if he's living. But the people that seem to be running it, and they seem that based on really fact, because things they've said have taken place.
Mr. President,
Again,
Mr. President, I know you've deployed.
because I don't want him to be killed. Okay, I don't want him to be killed.
President, you deployed.
Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants that job right now. nobody's exactly looking forward to being the head of that particular country, but perhaps we'll be able to solve that problem.
Mr. President, you've deployed ICE agents to American airports today. Newsmax, sir. You've deployed ICE agents.
You're not doing a very good job.
You've deployed ICE agents.
You're not doing a good job. Did you hear me? Okay, go ahead.
What exactly do you want?
Wow. Whoa. The Newsmax attack.
What exactly are you looking for in these talks, Mr. President?
We're looking for all of the things that we've been talking about. We want to see no nuclear bomb, no nuclear weapon, not even close to it. Low key on the missiles. We want to see peace in the Middle East.
Low key on the missiles.
We want the nuclear dust. We're going to want that, and I think we're going to get that. We've agreed to that. Yeah, we've agreed to that.
You want the enriched uranium before you can end this.
And we want no enrichment, but we also want the enriched uranium. If this happens, it's a great start for Iran to build itself back, and it's everything that we want. And it's also great for Israel, and it's great for the other Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, all of them, Kuwait and Bahrain in particular. So it's great for all of them.
If the war is ending, do you still need $200 billion?
It's always nice to have. It's always nice to have. It's a very inflamed world, and the Democrats inflame it. You know, largely the Democrats.
I think we can all
inflame
agree
it.
on that.
Yeah.
Let me just talk about the others. So ICE has done very well. I've requested. Now, you know, I'm a big believer that they should be able to wear masks when they go and hunt down, you know, murderous criminals and others. But for purposes of the airport, I've requested that they take off the mask. I don't like it for the airport, and I believe they are willing to do that.
Mr.
Why
President,
do they wear masks not at the airport, but they need to do it when they're out in the country?
The people coming into the airport, typically speaking, aren't murderers, killers, drug dealers, etc. There may be a few of them, but there are many. They're people that want to come into the country, or that people want to leave the country, go into maybe their home country. So I didn't think it was an appropriate look for an airport. I think it's a very appropriate look when they're out on the street trying to find one of the 11,888 murderers that Sleepy Joe Biden led into our country.
Elon Musk, sir.
Last year you gave a $10,000 bonus. Sorry. Last year you gave a $10,000 bonus to TSA workers who kept showing up to work during the shutdown. Will you do that again?
Well, it could happen. It's amazing. There are people that are really, really loyal and great, and it's not easy for them. And this is all caused by the Democrats. It's just so you know, all this money was approved. Everything was approved. This is done. The Democrats went in, and they want to have radical left lunatics come into our country. They want to have drug dealers. They want to have murderers come into our country. They want to have open borders, and we're not letting it happen. That's what this is all about. They don't want voter ID. They don't want proof of citizenship. They don't want mail-in ballots. They're so corrupt. What they want, the only thing they want is mail-in ballots. So we also added, as you know, into the Save America Act. And it's called Save America. It's not the Save Act. But we added no transgender mutilization of our children and no men in women's sports.
Elon Musk, sir. If these talks go well, and you reach
I don't think he's going to be a Newsmax.
If these talks go well and you reach a ceasefire agreement with Iran,
Wow.
do you believe Israel would abide by that agreement?
I don't know.
I think Israel will be very happy with what we have. We just spoke to Israel a little while ago. I think they'll be very happy. This will be peace for Israel, long-term peace, guaranteed peace. If this happens, and you know I can't guarantee it, but I think it's going to. My life is a deal. That's all I do is deals my whole life. I think this is something that's going to happen. And why wouldn't it happen? So tomorrow morning sometime, their time, we were expected to blow up their largest electric generating plants that cost over $10 billion to build. It's a very good one. There was no dearth of money. And one shot, it's gone. It collapses. Why would they want that? So they called. I didn't call. They called. They want to make a deal. And we are very willing to make a deal. It's got to be a good deal. And it's got to be no more wars, no more nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons anymore. They're agreeing to that. Any of that stuff, there's no deal.
Have they offered to reopen the
You said you want to get the enriched uranium. How are you going to get the enriched uranium? Are you going to
It's very easy. if we have a deal with them, we're going down and we'll take it ourselves.
Can I ask you, the Treasury lifted sanctions on Iranian oil that was out to sea. You criticized President Obama for giving Iran $1.7 billion.
Well, I just want to have as much oil in the system as possible.
But Iran is
And we don't even know if Iran gets that money. Frankly, I think it's very hard for them to get it. But you have ships that are out there that are loaded up with oil. Rather than keep it there, I would rather see it go to the system. Any small amount of money that Iran gets is not going to have any difference in this war. But I want to have the system be lubricated.
even $14 billion, you don't think helps them?
Where's the $14 billion?
Because the inflated price, they get $14 billion from the.
I don't think they're getting the money. I could tell you, when this is all over, I will tell you who's getting the money.
Mr. President, the Marines from California, given that it'll take them weeks to arrive, is the intention to police the strait or take cars?
What are you talking about?
Well, it's been reported that there are Marines that left California, left San Diego last week, at the end of the week. Why are they headed there now?
Well, let me ask you this. If you were in my position, and I asked you that question, do you really believe I'd give you an answer? It's a crazy question.
Mr. President,
we don't talk about strategy. Yeah?
Another young woman was killed by an illegal immigrant that was let in under the Biden administration.
Let in by Biden.
Give a message for her family.
It's devastating. These people were let in by Biden. We're getting them out. We're getting them out fast. That's why ICE is so important. They're doing such a good job. This animal, I saw the whole thing last night. They gave me a briefing. Came in through Joe Biden with his open door policy.
Let's keep monitoring it, but I want to talk about what he said. Guys, he said the U.S. has a reliable interlocutor in the Iranian senior level of the Iranian government who's going to agree to get rid of Iran's nuclear program. And he didn't say eliminate the missile program, but he suggests seriously degrade it. The markets love this. And while this may not happen, and the president made it clear it might not happen, it could happen. And it'd be an extraordinary, obviously not just development, but it'd be an extraordinary accomplishment for the United States and Israel. So, Larry, the president also seemed pretty jaunty, seemed pretty upbeat.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what happens next, given what he said?
So what really stuck out to me because he was challenged and said, well, who is it you're talking about? And he said, I don't want him to die. I don't want him to be killed, number one. Yeah. But when challenged about, well, how do you know this is somebody who can do something? He said, because they've been able to achieve certain things to basically prove that they have some control and are in charge of enough for them to sort of buy into this. So, I mean, that's extraordinary what he just communicated. Yeah. And I'm with you. I think just going by his mood, considering the topic, and also when he said, my whole life is deals, we're making deals. He sees this as the ultimate deal. And I think that he feels pretty confident right now that he's gonna land the plane.
Yeah. And Kevin, those Marines who are there could be the ones to go in and take the nuclear material. If there is a deal along the lines of what the president said, though, Kevin, it does leave one thread left that's pretty significant, which is the people of Iran. In other words, is the president going to make a deal that keeps the regime in place? Can he do that after telling the Iranian people, stay in your homes, and when we're done, it will be your opportunity to rise up?
Yeah, it looks like that. Again, I think this president is after a deal, to Larry's point, and will declare victory if those two military objectives are secured. He's backed away from any kind of notion of regime change, like you talked about the first week of the war. I'll have my winners and losers of the week just today. Winner is Caitlin Collins for getting 8 questions into the president. Loser is Newsmax. Poor guy, whoever that is. I think there might be an open seat on Air Force One in Memphis today. Yeah, that was pretty. I
didn't recognize that voice. All right, we'll keep monitoring the president.
James Rosen, that's for sure.
It was not our friend James. We'll keep monitoring the president, and in the meantime, Tom, welcome in. Unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Larry and for Kevin.
Yeah, I am everybody. Tom Lewis, upstate New York in Saratoga Springs. I put a link in the chat of one of the greatest things I've ever seen on Hillsdale College. If you want to understand who Mark Halperin is, what his plans for the future are, and an analysis of the mainstream media, and why this two-way platform is so successful. Watch it. I have a question mark. Give us a brief idea of what the future, how would the game show two-way operate? That's something to look forward to.
Well, the game show, it will be unveiled soon, and it's fantastic. It's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant use of two-way, and as we've said all along, many of you come here now for the political programming, but you're going to see programming in all sorts of categories, including a game show coming soon that just takes advantage of the fact that we now have the capacity to have two-way communication. Game shows should not be done in studios. Doesn't make any sense. Everybody in the world should be able to be a contestant. So stay tuned for the game show, but stay tuned for all sorts of programs: music, entertainment, politics, sports, business, dating show. There's going to be a lot of two ways coming everybody's way. And I appreciate, Tom, you citing my talk at Hillsdale. And again, if you're interested in my view of two-way in a more extended way, please go to the Hillsdale site or look at the link Tom put in the link, and you can see what I had to say about all that. Tom, grateful to you for watching and for being part of two-way. Thank you.
And another reason to log in the platform a little early, because Mark usually leads us in trivia of the day, which is a little preview.
That's right.
I
apologize. I've got game show lighting. See, I can
you
do
do.
that.
I apologize for not saying more about the game show, but I wanted to speak for itself, and we'll have the show to show everybody pretty soon. It's still in development, but coming soon. Andres, welcome in.
That Hillsdale crowd is great, isn't it? Don't you? I gave a speech 2 years ago there.
Yeah.
Great crowd at Hillsdale.
Great trip, great community. I'm really honored to have been invited and participate in their conference that they did on the media. Lots of conversation about what going on in Iran has to do with Ukraine, and we've seen some focus on it, but not enough as always. Andre, welcome in. Tell us what's on your mind.
Hi, yeah, we had conversations with the Witkoff team and Ukraine's team of 4 people who flew into Miami this weekend. But Ukraine, actually, the journalists I speak to are looking at a whole bunch of other things, including there's a Russian tanker headed to Cuba. We still don't know who's going to intercept that. That's a deadline for today to see if there's another red line that President Trump is going to either back up or back away. And then really what I want to ask about is what's going on with Orban right now. We had a lot of Orban news over the last 4 days, notably the Netanyahu endorsement, the Vance visit, a whole bunch of revelations about how Orban has been having his person tell the Russians exactly what the EU is talking about behind closed doors, not to mention all the way it's blocking support. So I want to know people's thoughts about how the U.S. is handling this, with Orban being the one country really not listening to President Trump as far as stopping buying Russian oil, and where we go forward from this.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and he has been such a I won't say compelling, but distinctive, significant figure for a while, and enigmatic, and this end game is amazing. I'm jumping over to Sirius XM right now, again, rolling into the second hour on Sirius Channel, Megyn Kelly Channel 111. So if you'd like to be part of the conversation over there, come over to Sirius XM 10 Eastern Time, and I will see you tomorrow. But I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Larry and Kevin to talk to Andre's question and then close out the show. And of course, I'll see everybody at 5 o'clock Eastern Time here with full coverage of all the developments during the day on Two Way tonight. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Kevin.
Mark.
Thank you, Larry. See you in a minute.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Kevin,
Mark.
First of all, Kevin, are you waiting to get your passport renewed or something? You look like you're in the waiting
I'm
room.
as I said in the chat, I'm getting ready for the SAVE Act potentially. So I got to get all my documents in a line.
Get your marriage certificate all lined up. Yes. I have several friends at Newsmax. I've texted them all. They're all going nuts over there right now, and nobody has been able to tell me who's in the pool for Newsmax today. So if hopefully I'll find out during the show and I'll let you know.
Andre, it's a great question though. On Orban,
it is, and I can, and as usual, I want to ask you questions, but I can just tell you in the American conservative sort of ecosphere, Orban is seen as kind of a put upon conservative, although imperfect, and certainly doesn't do everything that we would support or like, but we feel like he has been sort of ostracized and attacked unfairly in a similar way that Donald Trump has been in the past. And so there's this sort of instinctive embrace of him because of a lot of his support of conservative, traditional, European traditions that it sort of makes him an outlier, an island compared to other aspects of the EU and other directions that we would disagree with. So there's very much a lot of vocal and visible support for him here and his government in Hungary. Although what he's doing with Putin behind the scenes, that's not getting reported a whole lot here, Kevin. At least I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of that either. And Andre brings up the interesting point too with Bibi and his support, visual and otherwise support of the regime right now. Seeing Andre though, it's a good segue to just say what the incredible things happening with Ukraine in the last 24, 48 hours. You saw the great news of this Ukrainian company joining the Dow and taking off in terms of drone technology. Obviously, Ukraine coming to our rescue and regional partners with Iran and making great advancements on the battlefield too, and increasing their capacities to target longer range targets within Russia to hopefully bring an end to this war on Ukrainian grounds, not Russian grounds.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because we're hearing reports that the Russians have really lost a lot of ground. What can you give us some details and verify a lot of that?
Well, February marked the first time in over a year that Russia has lost more territory than occupied. A lot of that people focus on the Starlink disconnection, where their frontline forces aren't able to use that, nor their drones can use that. But then it's also the production of drones from the Ukraine side. As you guys mentioned, Ukraine is up to about 2,000 interceptor drones a day coming off the assembly line. They want to see 60,000 a month. And that's why they are able to produce more interceptor drones than actually their military complex can purchase for Ukraine, which is why Ukraine is able to go to the Middle East countries and be like, listen, we have these. The training isn't that hard. We'll set you up with training, and these will target the Shahed drones that are 35,000 each. We're producing these for less than that, the interceptor drones. You don't have to waste your Patriot batteries. That's another thing. I don't know if you guys follow this. When the Ukrainians came down to the Middle East, they realized that the Middle East countries are so effing wealthy with the Patriots that they were leaving their Patriot batteries on automatic. That multiple Patriots were being used to shoot down the same thing, which is something that Ukraine doesn't have the luxury of doing. So Ukraine has been learning how to do more with less. I think going forward, that's going to be a big conversation, especially with our deficit here in the country, about what we can learn from that going forward, because by necessity, Ukraine has been doing more with less.
Well,
that's great, Andre. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and listen, considering you are obviously in an existential war for your survival, the fact that you have been able to give the kind of support, whatever support you've been able to give to our effort against Iran, is being noticed here and appreciated by the American people. So thank you.
Oh, and the European commander said that in Congress last week. Like he's just like it's all hands on deck right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, guys.
We
appreciate
it. To you and Kevin. We've reached the end. We've gone into overtime, in fact. And
we have. Mark mentioned 2A live tonight.
I don't get paid any extra for that.
I know. Mark mentioned 2A live tonight at 5 p.m. And we've got another episode of Lifelong with Ethan with a special fitness coach, Gabriella Lascano, at 7 p.m. Tonight, and then of course the morning meeting back tomorrow. But we're off.
Morning meeting
with
back.
Hogan and Heima.
You know what? I just got a notification that I might be here. If that matters to any of you,
that's a nice tease.
And or Hogan. It's in negotiations right now.
So tune in tomorrow to see who we get.
That's right. How's your bracket looking, Kevin? By the way, how many?
No, I don't. I stopped filling it out when Barack Obama left office. I would just copy his and use that. So,
how'd that work out for you? He always picked the number one seeds. It was,
I know. If you like your team, you can keep your team.
My entire Elite Eight is still intact. 3 of my Sweet 16 are out, but I'm looking good. My bracket is not busted, and of course, Michigan.
You better be making some money off of this.
So, sadly, no, just bragging rights, but it's enough for me. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.